Hello, hello. Happy Sunday, everybody. Happy Chinese New Year. Kyung-hee, Kyung-hee. You feel me? I got like 10 envelopes the other day. It was amazing. I love the fact that my mom knows everybody. So for them to make sure that they're nice to my mom, they give me money. It's great. Yeah, Kyung-hee Fat Choi, right. But yeah, happy Chinese New Year, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great morning. Hope everyone's not too tired, and hopefully everyone slept well. So yeah, I was trying to decide what to talk about for today. I really couldn't figure anything out. Nothing was like coming up right away. I wasn't feeling anything, so I was just like thinking about it, praying about it, and then I don't know. I didn't have the time to think about it because this past winter, over these past 2 months, I got really busy. I was trying to get internships, emailing people, my managers, scheduling Zoom meetings. I was taking a class too for over the winter break. I was also filming. I was editing stuff for our YouTube or Instagram. I was doing so many things, and I would be out running around all day, every day. And then by the time I get home, I'm really tired, and I wouldn't have any time to sit and think about my sermon, what I wanted to talk about. And that happened for the entire month. I would always pray God, please give me the time to sit down and actually decide what I want to talk about for today. But every day, I would always just end up being really tired. I would sit down or lay down on my bed and I would fall asleep right away. I wouldn't end up thinking about it, doing anything, preparing anything for my sermon. But I remember I got home, I went to the gym, it was a leg day or something. I was so tired. And I remember I was showering to decompress and just relax for a little bit. And I remember I was wow, I'm not going to prep for my sermon again. It's going to be the same thing. And I remember I was thinking about it. I was doing my business, and I realized out of nowhere, whoa, what if for today I talk about balance? Can everyone say balance? Balance. Because I was whoa, I didn't have any time to think about my sermon because I didn't properly balance my time. I didn't properly balance my day-to-day stuff. And I was thinking about the idea of balance and whether it could be a good topic to talk about for today. And I thought about it. I was whoa, this is actually a really good topic to talk about. So for today, I'm going to be talking about balance. And my title is... yeah, more than 50-50. Can everyone say more than 50-50? More than 50-50. Cool. So, yeah, more than 50-50. And I'll explain what I mean by that as I go on. But before I start, I want to show this example. So can you go to that seesaw? Thanks. So this is a seesaw. I'm sure you guys can tell what that is. And so you know how a seesaw, right? Its main purpose is to balance stuff, right? You have something on one side and one thing on the other. And the point is try to balance it so that it's even and stuff, right? Ooh, sorry. Sorry. I want you guys to I just want you guys to have this in your mind as I go throughout my sermon for today, okay? I just want you to keep this in mind, a seesaw, okay? Seesaw, balancing things, etc. Okay? Cool. So when I was trying to prepare a sermon about balance and reading throughout my Bible to see what I could talk about, what kind of examples there were about balance, I read about Jesus. I read about how Jesus is the perfect example of balance. And reading about his story, about his ministry, there were actually 3 things that I want to talk about that I think are really under-talked about. They're not really discussed a lot. They're not really talked about a lot. So the first topic I want to talk about is, can you pull it up? Ministry inside and outside of church. Balancing stuff like this is really hard. For me personally, for sure. Being around everywhere, serving on stage, serving up here, serving in the back, for filming, editing, doing whatever at Sunday school. There's a lot of things on my plate. And, it's really tough to balance serving here and serving outside. with your friends, with your family, especially your family at home. And thinking about this, preparing this, I remembered one of Gil's, I think it's like his first sermon or second sermon, I don't remember which one it was, but one thing that he said that really stuck out to me was how our first ministry is at home. Our first ministry is with our family, with our siblings, with whoever. And I'm just going to describe to you guys like my story when it comes to ministry. So, yeah, like I said, right, I would be really busy with ministry, like having meetings, preparing events, doing whatever. I would be out all the time. I would be out or I would be busy at home. I would be so busy and so occupied that I would not have time with my family. And I realized, I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, I don't really spend that much time with my family nowadays. So I tried to spend time with them. I tried to like go out with them a little bit more. I tried to eat out with them and like stuff like that. But I remember every time I would go to eat out with them or hang out with them, everything always felt tense. I don't know how to explain it. It was just like, it was weird. I think it was weird because like praying about it and thinking about it, I was like, that was like the last thing to come to mind. And I realized, I also learned that me praying about it and me asking God for God to do something, but for me to not do anything, that's not helping as well. I realized that if I want something to change, I have to be the change. If I want something to happen, God is probably going to use me to make that happen, especially when it comes to my parents. So doing that, learning that, and knowing that from now on, I decided to cut down on ministry like a little bit. I decided to not do Sunday school as much anymore, not serve as much on stage, and spend more time with my parents like on the weekends and stuff like that. And I can tell you, it really helped out like a lot. Because I spent more time with my family and more downtime, we've talked more. I think I mentioned this before in my last sermon, but we've talked more. I've learned more about their perspectives, their viewpoints, their issues with me, and vice versa. It was really good for us, It was really good for us to learn each other's perspectives and viewpoints and come to an understanding, So when it comes to ministry inside and outside of church, basically what I want to say is if it ever comes to a point where you're not spending enough time with your family, whenever it comes to a point where when things aren't that good at home, when you're not able to be at peace with your family, from my experience, I've learned if you have to cut down on ministry to fix your ministry at home, totally fine. It's totally fine to do that. Because investing in your relationship with your family, it'll pay off so much. I promise you in the future. So remember that seesaw that I mentioned in the beginning, right? Usually, if you want to balance a seesaw, if you want to balance like that thing, you would put the fulcrum, the triangle thing, you would put it in the middle, right, to make it balanced. And that's usually how people see life, right? If you want to balance things, it has to be 50-50, half and half of each. Half of your time and when it comes to this, maybe half of your time should be for ministry at church, and maybe half of your time should be outside of church. But that's not always going to be the case for everyone, because not everyone has the same life situation, life circumstances. For me, my whole thing, can you go back to the seesaw so I can explain it a little bit better? So for me, the way I balanced it was 80-90% ministry in church and 10-20% outside of church. And for me, that did not work at all. That did not work. I was doing too much on one side and not giving enough for the other side. I was giving too much of myself to serve. I was not giving enough of myself at home. Does that make sense? Like, that's what I'm trying to get at. So what worked for me is that I kind of pushed the triangle, the fulcrum part, a little bit over. So nowadays, it's more so 50-50. It's more so maybe 60-40, The point I'm trying to get here is that balance is not just splitting things in half. Balance is having priorities. Balance is being able to determine what is more important at the time. If you notice that something is off or something is lacking, prioritize that. That is balance. Balance is knowing what is important and what you need to focus your time and your energy on. Okay? Yeah. So that's basically what I'm trying to get at here. And I'm going to tell you a little story too while I'm at it. So, yeah. So I decided to, I was determined to spend more time with my family and be with them more. So my dad, he loves to watch football games, right? He loves to watch sports games. He loves to sit down in the living room and watch it. And I remember this one specific game. It was a football game. I don't remember who it was, but I think it was the Eagles. Oh, my dad's in the back. Hi. So it was I forgot who was playing, but I think it was the Eagles and someone else. Go Birds, And I totally forgot what it was, but usually what he would do is he would come to my room, he would knock on the door, and then he would peek in, with his head through the door. I would usually be there on my PC, I'll be editing, I'll be filming, I'll be playing games, or whatever I'll be doing, right? And then he would come in, he would tap my shoulder, and he'd be like, Ethan, the game's on. But usually what I would do is oh, okay, cool, thanks for letting me know. And then I would go back to doing my own thing, right? But this time I decided, you know what? I'm going to stop, I'm going to get off my PC, I'm going to go downstairs and spend time with my dad. So I get off, I turn everything off, I go downstairs, and I sit next to him on the couch. And we're watching the game, we're doing whatever. My dad is not a guy that speaks a lot. And I'm sure you guys can relate with that. My dad doesn't talk a lot, but I can just tell he really liked it. He really liked me spending time with him. That's his love language. That's the day I learned that his love language is quality time. Because even though he didn't say it, it was his body language. It was he was more upright, he was smiling more, he was it was cute. I don't know how else to describe it. It was cute. He was more excited, he was more vibrant. It's the type of thing where you can see it in his eyes, where he was happy that I was there, happy that I was spending time with him, And after that, I started to go down more, we started to talk more, I started to learn more about him, about how he sees things, how he views things. It was just good, Being able to prioritize spending time with my family saved our relationship. It was great. So yeah, love you, Dad. But yeah, okay. So that's the first thing, ministry inside and outside of church. That's the first topic I want to talk about. The second topic I want to talk about is serving and being present. Can everyone say present? Present. I'm not talking about a gift present. I'm talking about being present, being here. So like I said, I've been serving for a long time. And I'm usually, whether it's on stage or behind the scenes in the background, I'm serving. I'm probably doing something, whether it's for Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, whatever event we have. I'm probably doing something because that's how I've grown up. I'm used to serving because my parents serve, my friends serve. So I do that too. And I've been doing it for a long time. And I remember one Christmas, I was you know what? I haven't been in the congregation. I haven't actually sat down and enjoyed the service for a long time. So let me do that. So I decided to take off for a Christmas event. And the day comes, I walk in, I sit down, and I pick a seat, I sit down, and then the service starts, it's going on, and then in my head, the first thing that comes to mind is wow, I am not used to this, at all. I am not used to sitting down here and just watching everything happen. I'm really not used to being present with God. I'm really not used to just sitting here, being available to God. I'm so used to running around everywhere, making sure the service goes well and making sure people enjoy their time and experience the presence of God. But I'm really not used to experiencing God myself. That's what I learned. That's what I realized. If there was a Martha and Mary situation, I was Martha, the girl that runs around and cooks and does whatever instead of being present. If there was a prodigal son, an older son situation, I was the older son, serving and working and doing everything and not being available. I was not used to being available to God. And I realized that was what my relationship with God was lacking. Time, intimacy with God. I'm running around doing all these things to make God happy, but I totally forgot that the main thing that God wants from us is us. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He wants our heart. He wants our time. In a relationship, what do you need in a relationship for it to thrive and succeed? You need communication, right? You need time, you need energy. You need to invest in it for it to grow. I was investing in my relationship with God through serving, but not through time. You see where I'm getting with this? Can you go back to the seesaw? You guys see where I'm getting at with the seesaw example? Like, I was giving a little bit too much to the left side with serving, but not enough to the right side with time and energy. More like intangible things, you know? I was giving a lot of concrete stuff, a lot of that. And that's why my relationship with God was unbalanced, was uneven. So to fix that, I decided nowadays I've tried to, again, cut down on ministry a little bit just to be in the congregation more, to serve, to be more present with God. And I can tell you, it's really good for you. It does wonders for you. I feel like I've been more at peace with God. I feel like I'm not like running around everywhere. Being present and sitting still with God really works. It's not just something that people say on stage to like sound nice or sound smart. It works. Sitting down and being present with God, whether it's like praying, reading your Bible, or just standing up here and like enjoying the service, it works. I'm telling you, it works. You just feel something. You know, when you really try to just accept God and experience God, you will experience God, for sure. Yeah, and speaking about Jesus, I haven't talked about Jesus yet. Reading about Jesus, reading about his ministry, I realized that on top of that, right, on top of me not balancing like serving God versus being with God, I learned that Jesus, whenever he ministered, he was out every day, right? He was ministering to foreigners, to strangers, to people he didn't know, all day, every single day. But whenever he did that, Jesus always made sure to spend time with God. He always made sure to, after he's done serving, after he does whatever, that he spends time in intimacy with God. Can we pull up that verse in Mark chapter 1, verse 35? I think this is a really beautiful verse. It's a very simple and simple verse, but it speaks like volumes, you know? So I'll just read it for you guys. So early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went out to a secluded place and was praying there. So I'll give you guys some context. This verse right here, this is right after he fed 5,000 people. Like, you know, like the miracle where he like takes a basket of bread and he prays over it and then like it just multiplies, right, to feed 5,000 people. This is right after that. Even after that amazing miracle of him blessing people and feeding people, he still found time with God. He still found He still found a way to spend time with God and invest in his relationship with God and recharge himself and remind himself and keep himself grounded of why he's doing this. Not for his ego, not for the fame, not for the glory, but for God's glory. And yeah, so that's the first couple things. Oh, actually, can you pull up that verse in Matthew? I'm going to tell one more thing. Yeah, so I'll read it out for you guys again. Immediately he directed the disciples to get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, while he sent the crowds away. After he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. You know how there's 4 different gospels in the New Testament, right? Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, right? These are the first 4 gospels of the New Testament, and they all talk about the story of Jesus. While the authors of the New Testament, they tell the story a different way because, like, you know, different authors, different personalities. One thing that always sticks out in all 4 of them is that Jesus always spends quality time with God. That's always the main thing. Time with God, intimacy with God, intentional time at that, it's important. It's essential in your relationship with God. It really is. So that's the first 2 things. So the first thing I talked about finding like balance is ministry inside and outside of church, right? And then the second thing is serving and then being present with God. And the third thing, which is the thing I really want to talk about, is being Christian and being relatable. Can everyone say relatable? Relatable. This is the question topic that I really had in mind, that I was struggling with over like this whole year. Because for me, finding the balance between this was really tough. I'll give you guys some context. So my whole life, I've grown up in like a Christian bubble. I've had Christian friends. I've went to Christian events. I've been Christian. There's Christian everywhere. Christianity everywhere for me. Like I didn't really have that many friends outside of church. All my friends were inside of church. So I didn't know how people outside of church saw church people. Like I didn't know any stories. I didn't know a lot of experience. I only heard bad things. I've only heard the most extreme stories and most extreme experiences. Like I don't really have any like personal connection with that. I thought to myself, like, the questions I was like asking myself was like, because I was gonna go to Temple again, like that. I was gonna start going to Temple University. I was like, man, I'm gonna go to a new school. Like, I'm meeting new people. Like, how do I like mingle with these people? How do I talk to people that like don't believe in the same things as I do? Like, how do I get close to people like that? How do I respond when they say or do something that I like disagree with, but I don't want to be like the odd one out? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was struggling with those questions like a lot, and I didn't know how to like go about it. And it was just tough, Like, I think the other thing I was thinking about was like, will I become like less Christian? Will I like change? Like, what's gonna happen to me? Like, I was like really like, I was confused. I was nervous. I was worried. I didn't really know what to do. So to find the answer to that, I went back to the Bible and I read about the ministry of Jesus again. I wanted to see how Jesus acted in these situations. And I learned that Jesus' specialty was relationships. That was his thing. The way Jesus inspired people was not only through like being like on stage or being in front of a crowd and speaking about the kingdom of God, but what he really excelled at. Of course, he excelled at everything, but what he really excelled at was investing in his relationships with people, with his disciples. The way he inspired people was through his example, especially to not only his disciples, but to people outside of that like group, of that disciple group. And do we have that quote by any chance? I really want to talk about this one quote that because I was like Googling, I was like kind of trying to research about like how to explain how good Jesus was at relationships. And I think this quote really like gets all of it. So this quote is by a guy named Gunther? I don't really know how to describe it, but it's like one of those. It's one of those. But this guy, he wrote a book called Mentoring for Mission. And basically, he talked about how Jesus mentored people, how he discipled people, and most importantly, how he built and invested in his relationships with his congregation, with his disciples. So I'm just going to read out this quote for you guys. So, through the disciples' continual exposure to who he was, what he did and said, Jesus intended them to discern and absorb his vision, mindset, and mode of operation. He desired them to become so saturated with the influences arising from his example and teaching, his attitudes, his actions, and anointing, that every single area of their lives would be impacted towards greater likeness to himself. The approach he decided on was simple and informal, practical and holistic. The totality of shared life experiences made up the disciples' classroom, and their teacher's words merely needed to further elucidate, meaning to further explain or clarify the lessons already gained from his life. To summarize all of this, the way he inspired people was by being with them, by spending time with them, investing in relationships. I've mentioned it so many times. Doing life with people, whether it's like Christian people or non-Christian people, the way you inspire, the way you bless and like minister to people, share the word of God with people, and share the good news about Jesus is by being with those people, doing life with them, sharing life experiences with them, It's like the sort of thing where your actions mean a whole lot more than your words. The way you live, the way you lead by example is how you inspire people. This is how Jesus inspired people, but especially his disciples, by just living out what he would say on stage, That is how he ministered to people. That is how he was able to find the balance between being Christian but also being relatable. And applying that to my life, I read about this and I was like, wow, that's how Jesus did it. That's how Jesus was able to minister to people so effectively, because he wasn't like the Pharisees, who were just very knowledgeable teachers, but had no, like, they weren't really good at making human like connections. Like, they weren't able to form a bond with their students. But Jesus was. Jesus was able to do that because he was humble enough to try to put himself in their shoes. You know what I'm saying? He was able to empathize with them and understand them and be willing to have an open mind and try to listen to people, you know? And learning about that, I tried that, like, at Temple. I tried that with, like, my friends. Like, when I went meeting people, and I can tell you, it works. I'm going to call out one of my friends here. His name is George, good old buddy of mine. He's not here right now, but he might see this sermon later. Sup, George? George is one of my good friends from Temple, and I met him over the summer, and we started hanging out more. George is not Christian, right? He isn't really like into Christian. Like, even while his family is Orthodox, he isn't really like Christian like that, you know? But whenever we like hung out more and talked more and stuff like that, I remember one thing he told me was that, like, I invited him to like our Friendsgiving event that happened not too long ago. And I remember I asked him, like, hey, how did you enjoy the event? Did you like it? Were the people nice and everything? He was like, yeah, you know, like, your church friends are so cool. They're so nice. And they're like genuine. They're really kind and like compassionate people. I feel loved. I feel like welcomed by them. I feel like I'm wanted there. And his words really like stuck out to me, because coming from someone who doesn't really know Jesus like that doesn't really like go to church like that, hearing that, it was like, wow, you know, it's like, that's what Jesus did. That's like that's the fruit of what happens, you know, like doing life with people, spending time with them, and just being authentically you and being unapologetically Christian at the same time. That is how you inspire people. That is how you minister to people, you know? That's how you find a difference between being Christian and being relatable. You do life with them. You be with them. You serve them. You do all these things. Do all the things that Jesus did, is basically what I'm trying to say here. And as we conclude for today, so if I can call the worship team back up, I think if there's one thing that I really want you guys to understand from all this, is that I don't want you guys to be scared when it comes to going to school or going anywhere and mingling and hanging out with people that aren't Christian. And I don't want you guys to like have to think about, oh, like, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to say? Like, are they going to think I'm weird? Should I like do whatever? Like, I don't want you guys to overthink any of that. If you go back to the seesaw for one last time, seesaw, I'm telling you, I'm gonna ingrain this example into you guys' minds. When it comes to being Christian and being relatable, this is not a 50-50 split, I'll tell you that. It should not be half Christian, half whatever else. I want this to be more so 80-20. I want this to be more 70-30. I want you guys to be unapologetically Christian. That's the most important thing. Being Christian, going to church, that is you. Don't let going into a new environment with new people who don't necessarily agree with you, don't let that be something you're ashamed of, okay? Be proud of that. Be proud to be a Christian. Be proud to believe in Jesus. But also, be willing to do life with people. Be willing to listen to other perspectives. And be willing to listen, you know, just be human and empathize and learn. Be willing to learn. So, if I can ask you all of you guys to stand up.